Okay, I've hit record and I'm with Scott Williamson. Scott, talk to me about before we jump into the piece you sent, which is very, very good. Um, I always struggle when somebody sends me something as good as what you sent me because I'm like, we're just gonna spend the entire time talking about like, well, you did that really well. So talk to us a little bit about where you are in your writing journey.
Yep. So I am. I'm going to go full context here because that's what I like to do. I'm not someone that's. A lot of people answer this. I've been writing my whole life. I'm not one of those people. I've kind
Yeah.
of started doing this about 5 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
5 years ago. Just picked it up as something to do, as was looking to do something creative that was outside 3 kids and a job.
Yeah.
So picked it up and just loved it. Started writing and loved it. I have a short story collection out, which is kind of more on the urban fantasy side of things. So I've got that out. I also had a short story in Sasha Black's Rebel anthology.
Okay.
So that's kind of the things that I've got out there just now.
Gotcha.
Not got a novel out yet. Lots of perfectionism comes in when I'm writing a novel. So
Okay.
I'm still um working through that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so this is the current novel that I'm writing. I'm writing in a genre that I love. So it's
Okay.
like epic fantasy with a kind of a dark, kind of grim dark edge to it.
Gotcha.
So this is which you could probably tell by the piece. Um, so yeah, I tend to be one of these people that sits down reasonably pleasant as a person and then
Yeah.
sits down and just darkness comes out my fingers.
I'm the same way, man. Yeah. The things I write are,
Yeah,
often a little scary. Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of where I'm up to just now.
Okay. How many
Yeah.
novels have you written and not finished?
Uh, like th- that's too depressing to think about on a Monday morning.
Okay, fair. We can leave that
Right.
question where it is. I
Yeah,
feel like that's a satisfactory answer that you just gave me there. So we'll,
yeah.
but yeah. What typically stops you from writing a novel? Like you're in the middle of
Um,
it and you're like, I'm gonna put this down.
the so I'm kind of the person who starts and gets like 20, 30, starts with an idea,
Hmm.
gets 20, 30,000 words in, and then doesn't know where it's going, and then thinks that means that there's something wrong with it, and then stops. So that's
Gotcha.
so
Okay.
with this, I've spent a bit more time thinking and plotting, but that doesn't mean there hasn't been false starts. So there's
Of
been a
course,
few
yeah.
starts with this. And now, yeah, I've also got a coach as well who's helping me, like
Good.
she's more on the kind of strengths coach, which is
Nice. That's
um
awesome.
which is helping as well. And yeah, so it's been a bit of plotting and a bit of just my kind of perfectionism, basically, like trying,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
So
All right. I'm gonna put the piece on the screen and
yeah.
let's talk through it. So first off, I just gotta say, your writing's fantastic. How many drafts have you done of this?
Um, a few, like,
Okay.
yeah. It's
Okay.
hard. It's hard for like this is where the perfectionist comes in. It's hard for me to know that I'm sending something to you and then sending something that I'm going to talk about in a podcast. Like I'm not going to write a first draft and just send it to you.
No, I would never. Yeah,
that
I'm with
that
you.
would be that
I don't
it's
I
hard.
don't I know why people do, but I'm with you. I'm in a place where like I I'm such it's probably a little different than your perfectionism. I'm such an anxious person
Yeah.
that like I couldn't not touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
couldn't
Yeah.
I couldn't send it to myself and not have like touched it like 7 or 8 times. I would probably end up sending myself like 4 copies. It'd be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, here's what I want to talk about. Hey, if you haven't read it yet, I changed these 3 words in these 3,000 words. Now look at this. Yeah. Um, so let's first talk about what you're doing really, really well
Yeah.
before we get into places that I want you to prove. First,
Yeah.
opening nine is fantastic. Now, is this intended to be the first chapter, or is this just
It's
a
just a
piece in
scene.
the
To
middle?
be honest, I wrote this to like get a feel for the two main characters. Like I wrote this scene to get a feel for like the interaction between Greta and Mother Rottens. So I
Okay,
didn't. So it was kind of like a. She's Mother Rotten's eventually going to be like a mentor kind of figure,
gotcha.
and so this was just me feeling that out a bit.
Okay. Was
So
the so Greta enters has this is you learn in this piece is expelled from the kind of tower that
yeah,
was her home,
yeah,
and Mother Rotten is kind of running a orphanage of dying and you know gutter kids,
yeah,
just to
yeah,
say the kind of like yeah,
yeah,
and that you find out later are armed to the teeth. So
yeah.
were you going for the Oliver Twist implication of Flanagan? Is that something that's an
Yes. So
inspiration?
yes, I saw your kind of comment around um this is giving me Oliver Twist vibes. And yes, I think
Okay.
the difference being that, Greta's not starting from that level of poverty. Like
Yeah.
she's actually coming down to this level and
Yeah.
then thinking that she's above it, and then essentially throughout the story, she's going to get humbled and want to help
Okay.
these
Perfect.
kids. And but yes, so I do think I need, like you talk about this in some of your comments around needing someone to show her around
Yeah.
this place. And yeah, so I definitely think that's going to get. I
Yeah.
do have that in my kind of other
Nice.
bits that I've done. So yeah,
Well, you've nailed it. And so things that you're doing really, really well.
yeah,
Greta comes off as somebody who we really want to be humbled.
yes,
You're doing
yeah,
a really good job with it. And that's hard. That's a hard thing to do to
yeah,
pull a character that you're like, oh, you don't get it.
yeah,
And I'm excited for when you do get it.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that's nice. The and you're totally right. Greta does not give off Oliver Twist vibes because Oliver
yeah,
Twist is like this super naive character. Like a lot of times those Dickinsonian characters are like one incredibly powerful note that
yeah, yeah,
you'll
yeah,
have like a character that's a single note in a world of very complex characters around them.
yeah,
And Oliver Twist kind of represents like childhood innocence and naivete. And then
yeah,
everybody else around him has these complex, but
yeah, yeah, true,
you're
yeah,
crushing the Flanagan side, which is the old man that has the like den of pickpockets and thieves, which is great.
yeah.
He's also disgusting and looks like a homeless beggar, and like he plays that like
What? So I've not. What story is that? Like I've not read it. So
oh so Oliver is an orphan. He's in an orphanage. He runs away from the orphanage. He meets a kid on the streets named
no,
Dodger.
no, sorry, not that. I know Oliver Twist.
Oh,
The Flanagan.
am,
So am I
am,
getting
aren't,
confused with?
aren't I thinking the right story? Am I confusing
Oh no,
stories?
no, no. You're right. You're right. I'm thinking around. Sorry.
No,
No, you're right,
dude,
right,
I
right, right. Yeah, yeah,
I do
no.
it all the time. I'm totally I'm like, yeah, in Oliver
No,
Twist
I know. Yeah, I know
where there's
Oliver
a
Twist.
giant
Definitely
rhino.
know. Like, there's
Yeah.
not like a question about that. It was more. I think. Yeah, I was getting confused with Flanagan, the name Flanagan, and I was thinking of something else. So
Okay. No, no,
carry on.
yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah, he's actually my favorite. He's the only thing I like in that story.
Right. Okay.
Is the like, and he's kind of a side character, but he's my favorite part of that story is the like,
Yeah. I I know who you mean. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, the old guy that like runs the den of
Yeah.
child
Yeah. Yeah.
thieves. Like he's great. In the musical, he's the one that they sing Consider Yourself Part of the Furniture
Yeah.
about. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, excuse me. So yeah, so you're hitting their relationship really well. Your dialogue between them is fantastic. You've got a really great dialogue ear. Part of what I love about you're spacing your dialogue in an excellent way. So your first conversation, and I want to pause on this, Scott, because a lot of people struggle with this, and I just
Yeah.
want to take a second to be like, hey, you nailed it.
Okay.
You come into the conversation with a strong explanation of where we are, who we are, and who's talking,
Yeah.
right? Very descriptive. Your descriptions are great. I know exactly what's happening. I can see it. I can smell it. You're hitting all five of the senses. It's really
Yeah.
good. You then let the characters talk, right? You give them some back and forth exchanges. And then you take it to a solid end of a segment. So like end of a emotional turn or a
Yeah.
subject change. And then in that emotional turn or subject change, you give us another moment of reflection
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
where you step us back. You're like, hey, remember, this is what the room looks like, this is what's going on, and Greta kind of interprets for us what she's seeing. Perfect. And then you're right back into the conversation. So your structure is
That,
spot on, man. Um,
that's that's pleasing to know because to be honest, I find it hard sometimes to do that. That like I get flashes in my head of a scene, like I get
hmm,
flashes of like the start and like at some point the girl who's being tended to has a knife and I get but trying to like blend the segments together cleanly and there's like
yeah,
one or two here where I struggle slightly like when she decides to enter the room
yeah, yeah.
that I was really struggling with like how do you just
How do you
how do
bring
you
her in?
blend like the moment to step into the room and
Yeah.
just like something that I think about a lot when I'm writing a scene is kind of the the movement between the different segments I'm writing.
Well, this piece is great, and you've got a good, and I can. Your segments are so strong. Most writers struggle, like most of us struggle on one of the two extremes.
Yeah,
There's actually three extremes. It's more like a try thing. Um, it's more like a peace sign, I guess. There's either they don't have enough dialogue.
yeah,
And so they're so into explaining the room, they're so into giving me backstory, they're so into like foreshadowing what's going to happen that like somebody will say something and then we'll get like 4 paragraphs of like backstory and
yeah,
what's going on.
yeah,
Another problem is it's all dialogue
yeah,
and they're just talking and we have no perspective or point of view on what's happening
yeah,
because we
yeah,
don't
yeah,
get any. And then the third thing is that like interrupting where they'll get like three exchanges and then in the middle of the energy of a conversation they drop this big paragraph of like stuff that totally pulls us out of the moment and then they try to take us back into the moment a second later.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You're doing because you're guarding your segments,
yeah.
you're avoiding all three of those.
Good.
Does that make sense? Your
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
transitions, um if you guard your segments like you're doing and you have solid perspective
yeah,
in your segments, the transitions matter a lot less
yeah, 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 yeah,
because the reader will just fly through them getting to the next segment. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
yeah, yeah. And maybe it's not that I struggle with. It's maybe just the like thinking about it now. Maybe it's the change in emotional tone across a
Okay.
scene and not making it too extreme.
Gotcha.
Like
Yeah.
I was trying to like, how do I not make Greta go diving in there and like getting really angry?
Okay.
Because I needed her to at some point make a lunge at Mother Rottens and then the girl have the knife. But I
Yeah.
need to ease into that. If that, do you know what I mean? Like
I do
that.
know what you mean. Yeah, because
Yeah.
otherwise they're like a hothead all the time.
Yes.
Every
Yeah. Yeah.
every
Yeah.
scene they're like popping off. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that's good that I appreciate that.
Yeah, part of that, and we'll talk about it. And let's go through the notes one at a
Yep.
time. We'll talk about that. I'll keep an eye on that. There is a place at the end where I can see you kind of trying to recycle emotion.
Yeah.
Where you're like trying to bring back an emotion that you've already spent. Like you've already spent that money, and then you're like, wait, give me that dollar back. I'm going to spend it again.
Yeah.
Uh, so we can talk
Yeah.
about that. The key to doing, I mean, this is some high level crap, man. The key to doing that kind of emotional flow work is knowing what each segment of conversation is supposed to make the reader feel.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So knowing like, okay, I have like 4 segments here.
Yeah.
And I've never been able to do this outside of editing. I can only do it when I edit. I can't do
Yeah.
it like just natural writing.
Yeah.
Being like, okay, this conversation has kind of 4 moves to it. The
Yeah.
scene has 4 moves to it. How do I want each move to feel?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like a comeback question. Does that make sense? Like I have
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
write it and then I can come back and be like, okay, how do I want each move of
Yeah.
this to
Yeah.
feel?
Yeah. That's
Um,
good.
and a
Go
lot
on.
of times what I end up doing, I have a feeling you're going to end up doing this too. A lot of times it's not about making the bigger part of the emotion pop. It's about pulling back the opening.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, like I'll come into a scene and I'll be like, oh man, I have this vision of this scene. I have like this thing that I want to happen.
Hmm.
Because I'm writing to that moment, I'm
Yeah.
coming in hot. Does that make sense? Like I'm like coming in like we're already at that place.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm in my head, I'm like getting to that place. And then when I edit, I have to come back and like pull characters down
Okay. Okay.
emotionally. I have to like, okay, we're
Yeah.
not going to start there. We're going to start. I
Yeah.
don't do that with this piece. This piece is great. You don't have
Okay.
to do that with this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, let's just go. Any questions before I start going through the notes one at a time? Any questions specifically you want me to answer
Um,
as we work through?
no, I don't think so. I think yeah, I'll come up with the kind of
Okay,
comments you made. Yeah, I don't think there's
perfect.
anything major.
So I love your opening line, and I want to pause on it a second because it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Ah, child, you have decided to join us. Come in and make yourself at home.
Yeah.
What a fantastic invitational
Yeah.
opening line to it, to a book. I mean, I want you to make this the first chapter of the book just because that opening line is
Yeah.
so amazing. It's really great, and it invites us in and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so nice job with that.
Thanks.
Uh, sorry, I had something in my throat this morning.
All right.
Um, so you then have this paragraph here. Greta didn't move, and this is, man, 1000% my preference, not a rule or anything. This is just like, oh, that would be nice up there.
Yeah. Okay.
You got
Yeah.
this great line you wrote at the end of the first paragraph. Make herself at home. She'd rather be burning the
Yeah.
place to the ground with everyone and everything in it. There's still time for that, of course. That's
And
such a
then
great defining line of Greta's character
yeah.
that I just wanted it earlier in the
Yeah. That makes sense.
paragraph.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I don't think it needs to be early. Like it's not a need to. It's just for me, it was just an ear thing. It was like, oh, this having this early really sets up who Greta is. You didn't have to come down here though and fix but she needed to take charge of this place. But
Yeah.
first she needed to take charge of this place. You'll have to re-reference it down here if you do that. If you separate the sentence I'm moving from its follow-up sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why it's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like
Yeah. That
this
makes
is
sense.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, strong opening paragraph. I immediately know, you know, Greta's like what's great about that line is it tells me right away, hey, this is the character. Greta and this is whose perspective we're from. And um she's kind of mean,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like if I were to define her with three adjectives, it would be, kind of mean and elitist and wounded. Knowing that you're going to move out of that elitist as the book goes on, that's what's going to be challenged about her.
That's yeah, those they nailed that's adjectives nailed it. Yeah. So that's good that that's coming across
Oh
in the
yeah,
language. Yeah.
yeah, man, you hit it. Um, your descriptions here are fantastic.
Yeah.
Overhead rain drummed over the bones, struggling to hold the building up, wet seeping through like blood from a wound and dripping onto her head. Damn, man. That's you're crushing it. Um, you have Mother Rotten's calling her in, which is really nice. You'll notice you got a whole page of no notes from me.
Yeah.
Um, I that is so rare. So just I'm telling you that to like tell your
Yeah.
perfectionist side, like
To
take some
piss
pride.
off. Yeah.
Because yeah,
Yeah.
because rarely do people get a whole page with no notes from me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is all great. And here I'm literally dude just playing with words to
Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, again, your opening conversation is good. You've got part of what I like about what you're doing with this conversation between Mother Rottens and Greta in the opening. You've given Mother Rotten something to do.
Yeah.
So she is like bandaging this child's wound.
Yeah.
That is and you take it to the next level, which is so great. So it's tough when we have people in conversation. It's hard to do body language and stuff like that if they're just sitting there looking at each other.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So you want to give them something to do with their hands. Does that make sense? So that you
Yeah.
can reference it.
Yeah. Yeah. Throughout.
Giving
Yeah.
Mother Rotten's a child is perfect because it gives her something to focus on besides the conversation,
Yeah.
which makes the conversation more strategic because she sounds like she's never actually giving a full answer,
Yeah.
right? Like if I just read her lines, don't be afraid, my children don't bite. No, no, of course not. I forget. You young trainees are much braver than my children. I dislike your tone. Do you know who I am? Oh no, that's
Yeah.
Greta.
Yeah. Yeah.
Enlighten me, Mother
Yeah.
Rotten says. So
Yeah.
she's never actually sharing any real information. She's kind of talking around
Yeah.
what's happening, which is fantastic. And part of the reason it works is because she's also doing something with her hands at the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Great technique in
That's
dialogue.
funny. That that gives the impression that I had any like
Mm.
that it just happened. So, uh,
Yeah, I'm sure
but
you're just visualizing the scene, and that's what you
yeah.
saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll notice they do this in movies all the time. Rarely are two characters just sitting talking to each other. They're in a diner and they're eating food,
Yeah.
or one of
Yeah.
them is like doing something at a coffee table, and the other one's like pacing around, right? Like
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
getting your characters, like putting things in their hands, getting them working on something, getting them moving. You have Greta continually looking for her weapon that's missing, right? Like it's
Yeah.
that you have that like movement that allows you more freedom in the dialogue because it fills the space of
Yeah.
something to do, and
Yeah.
it'll naturally protect your segments because it gives you somewhere to go.
Yeah.
When a segment of dialogue is over, they can both do what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like at
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
end of a segment, Mother Rottens can wrap a kid's foot and Greta can look for her sword and kind of observe the room, right?
Yeah.
Like it's that, yeah.
The other thing I found when I was writing, actually, the advantage I had with using the child, Lyra, in this case,
Mm-hmm.
was that I could use her as almost like changing the tone in the room.
100%.
So, like, yeah, so when she's crying and then she stops crying, that's a sign that, okay, things are changed. The
Yeah,
tone
the
of the room
emotional
has
tone has
changed.
changed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And I love that you picked a child in her lap because you're creating this like it's great that you have her doing something. The next level of that you've done here is having her do something that represents her character.
yeah, 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 yeah,
So she's this weird, grotesque, like rash covered, dirty
yeah,
figure, but she's caring for children.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's great because you put Greta in the position of hating children, which is yeah. Um, which is
yeah.
fantastic.
You okay?
So
Yeah, just
let's talk for a second while we're here about the character you're missing from this scene.
yeah,
Um, Greta is on an unlikable character arc,
yes, yeah,
meaning we're not going to like her until she actually starts to change.
yeah, yeah,
When you have a character that's unlikable, you have to pair them with someone who at least pretends to like them.
yeah. So the so I have another character that's not in the room and should maybe be in the room. Who um he is another orphan, but tends to ask a lot of questions about her and
Okay.
shows a lot of interest in her life, and to the point where it annoys her the amount of questions he asks,
Hmm.
and some
Yeah.
of the questions are almost like, "Oh, you look terrible. Are you feeling okay?" Like that kind of like
Interesting.
like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but he's not in the room here, and it was kind of because I was writing this more to get a feel for Mother Rottens, and I hadn't quite. So it's, but I think to bring him in now, I don't know. Like this is all up for
I
change,
would,
but it just
yeah, I wouldn't put him in this room.
yeah, it's a lot. Yeah,
Yeah, I would put him standing outside this room.
yeah, yeah. The the other option is I just don't have him and I change Lyra into this person. Like Lyra becomes, I don't know. But then you've got like,
Yeah, then you got to deal with the fact that you take away all of her toes.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah, what I'm envisioning, so the way like Mother Rotten's gonna come back, right?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, yeah,
So you need somebody that connects Mother Rotten to Greta
yeah,
and makes them both likable.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And that's what the Artful Dodger does, the kid named Dodger
yeah,
in Oliver Twist is
yeah,
he kind of takes Oliver. Now Oliver's a different character, but he kind of takes Oliver under his wing, and he is also the apprentice to Flanagan. So he kind of
yeah,
draws that connection between the two of them.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, you know, the question of the character you're creating here, the kid with a lot of questions, is going to end up being kind of a. If you have a kid with a lot of questions who wants to know a lot about her, the question Greta's going
yeah,
to struggle because the question is like, how does that kid impact Greta?
yeah. And I
That
guess,
that
yeah,
kid Greta's going to have to protect
yeah, 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 yeah,
at some point because she's in a position of power and he's smaller. So if you
yeah,
give your lead character power, then the question immediately becomes like, is she willing to protect this kid
yeah,
and sacrifice of her own desires to help that kid? Like that's where that narrative arc goes. Does
yeah,
that
yeah,
make
yeah,
sense?
yeah, 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 yeah. I
Excuse
think,
me one second. I have to cough and I don't want to
yeah,
do
yeah,
that
it's
again
okay.
here.
I'm gonna also say the other thing is the issue with, I guess, with him being someone that asks a lot of questions is you need him actually to be the one that tells her a lot of information. And if he's doing all the asking of the questions, like, if he's like the guide to this world and he spends all his time asking questions, is that gonna
Yeah,
be more difficult?
because you can have him asking questions about her world, not his
Yeah,
world,
yeah, 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 yeah,
right? Like, where do you come from? What this is, and make him extremely knowledgeable about his world.
yeah. Okay.
There's a nice potential twist with that character, and I'm talking about this because I know you're a little bit of a discovery writer from what
Yeah,
you
yeah,
described.
yeah,
Um, there's a nice twist with that character where he seems innocent and powerless,
yeah,
but there's actually a hidden sinister side to him where he's gathering information.
yeah.
That's uh that's a lot of times where those characters go.
That is a nice idea.
Yeah, there's a nice
Yeah,
twist there.
yeah, yeah,
Um the and it leaves you, especially if you connect that character to Mother Rotten,
yeah.
it
Hmm.
allows you the that's actually what happens with the Artful Dodger is a lot of the time he's running a scam.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so that allows, mother to keep Mother Rotten sinister. In
yeah,
the end, you'll have to decide what Greta's relationship is with that character.
yeah,
I'd make them more curious and questioning, but put them at the same age and kind of a peer.
yeah,
What you're looking for in that character is a character who seems curious and seems childlike, but is actually
yeah,
the version of Greta from this world.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Just
yeah,
plays it differently.
yeah, yeah. Yes, that is that's good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've already got.
And has
Yeah,
like a whole different set of skills. They're not going to be the
yeah,
fighter that Greta is. They're not going to be the strong arm that Greta is, but
yeah.
yeah. And I would intentionally have them always playing those skills down,
Yes. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
they pick a lock and Greta's like, wait, did you just pick that lock? And they're like,
yeah,
what? No, it
yeah.
was probably open already. It's not a big
Yeah.
deal, right? Like that
Um,
kind of like, yeah.
the the scenes that I've written with him in already, yeah. But she thinks down on a lot of people anyway. But she thinks that he's just like a childish kind of
Yeah.
like yeah,
He's a dummy. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
kind of silly, kind of goofy, often annoys her.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's a great that's what I wouldn't put him in this room.
Right. Okay. Yeah,
I
yeah,
would
yeah,
have him send her into this room.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I might have Mother Rotten mention especially if you're going to use this as a first chapter, I might have Mother Rotten mention, so and so sent you.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, because you don't actually have in here a reason that Mother Rotten is talking to her. It's that would give her an in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the overarching feel of this, like the kind of Mother Rottens does want to use her in some way.
Hmm.
Does want I think she can see what Greta could become, and
Yeah.
then she wants to use that to help the orphanage. So that's why she's trying to pull her into the room,
Gotcha.
um, and kind of strip away things like her money, her weapon, her
Okay.
status, and that kind of yeah. Um,
Nice.
which is why she has that kind of comment at the end around like no coin, no knife, no like looks like you're
Gotcha.
going to need my help. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And it does set up a good they're running a scam
yes,
and
yeah,
see
yeah,
her
yeah,
as an opportunity.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
What's nice about those kind of storylines is that often the Mother Rotten character won't even know what scam she's running
Okay,
yet. It's just an opportunity.
yeah,
And then she's
yeah,
going to kind
yeah,
of feel it out as it goes.
yeah, yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a, yeah.
Well, there's a kind of in the world that I've kind of built around her. It's like you have to do that just to survive. It's like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It's that, con men don't necessarily come in with a
yeah,
detailed plan. A lot of times they just
yeah,
come in
yeah.
with a strong feeling that there's
And
something
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah.
This and like this opportunity's landed on my lap. Let me take advantage of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Literally threw from the tower into my
yeah,
lap.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But going back to the relationship with Greta, when you have a completely unlikable character like this, pairing them with a character that is super likable,
yeah,
and then that character being their guide slash partner through the world helps us digest the unlikable Greta, right? Like it's the
yeah,
Han
yeah,
Solo Chewie
yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah,
You got to have Chewbacca because otherwise Han Solo's just an asshole. Right, but like he's got this big furry teddy bear walking alongside of him that seems to really like him. So
yeah,
we're like,
yeah,
okay, Han Solo, I guess, is a charming rogue because Chewie's there. Because Chewie is approved, so we will all approve. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I think the only issue with that slightly is the genre that I'm kind of writing in, like kind of that dark, grim dark. Like you can't have someone that's like so what tends to happen in this genre is you'll have like if you have like a fluffy character, like a kind of lovely character, they just get crushed.
yeah. It doesn't have to be a fluffy character. I just mean
Yeah,
it needs
yeah,
to be somebody whose voice we enjoy.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because we're
yeah,
not gonna like listening to Greta talk. She's too dark and brooding.
yeah, 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 yeah,
She's
yeah,
too like in her own head.
yeah, and
We need
actually,
somebody on the page that is fun.
yes, and that we're just thinking about it off the top of my head, some of my favorite books where they have that they do have there's a comedy aspect throughout it where they've just got like this layer of dark humor,
Yeah.
gallows humor throughout, and that often comes from the other character,
Yep.
not from
It comes
the
from the
main.
partner. Yeah,
Yeah,
not from the
yeah,
main.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and it doesn't even have to be funny. Like Sieg Larson does this, the girl with the dragon tattoo and the
yeah,
reporter, whose name I can't remember. The
yeah,
reporter is charming and very liking. The girl with the dragon tattoo is dark and brooding and
yeah, yeah,
troubled.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we
yeah,
don't actually want to read a book with just the girl with the dragon tattoo because
yeah,
she's like, we would be lost in a pit of despair as we
yeah,
read her
yeah,
book.
yeah,
But we'll read the reporter brings her humanity. Does
yeah,
that make
yeah,
sense?
yeah,
And that's you need somebody to make Greta human.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Avoid romantically entangling them.
Okay, okay,
That's something that happens I mean, you don't have to avoid it, but just know that if you romantically entangle them, he probably ends up being a bad guy or dying.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. If you romantically entangle them, when he betrays her, the betrayal is going to be so heavy
yeah,
that he's going to be really hard to forgive, which means the only way you forgive him is if he dies
yeah. Okay,
trying
right.
to
Yeah,
save her.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's that kind of like
Yeah.
Just playing through plot lines. Like it's like, yeah, you can romantically entangle them, but then at some point he's got to betray her for Mother Rotten.
Yeah. And
And
then
then he either has to die trying to save her in order to redeem himself.
yes,
Yeah.
that's
Um, and when he does that, he's not fun anymore. So,
because
so
he's
it's that,
dead.
yeah. Well, even if you like almost kill him and he lives through it,
Yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
he's not. We don't want them in a relationship. That's not fun. What's going to be fun is the tension between them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Um. Yeah. Best way to have a one-off book is
Kill
have your
everybody?
yeah no well have your two fun no come on George R. R. Martin
Oh
has
yeah, yeah. True, true,
kill
true, true.
everybody and just
Yeah.
invent Iron Islands and all of a
Yeah,
sudden
yeah, yeah.
whole new civilization.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's that take two characters that have really great uh opposing motivations and opposing voices and make them
Hmm.
a couple.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well now I care
Yeah.
less about this. Yeah. Yeah, so all of this was I had no notes in your opening conversations. Really,
Yeah.
really good. We've talked about how you're setting up who you're setting up the character to be.
Yeah.
Here you have this moment, and again, this is just ear, man.
Yeah.
It's not a right or wrong, but you have this moment where she starts to cry.
Yeah.
Um, she starts crying up here. Like you build her cries really nice. So
Mhm.
Lystra lifted her swollen gaze to Greta. Her bottom lip quivered before she let out a cry that filled the room.
Mhm.
Great kind of distraction point. And then here you like emotional tone change.
Yeah.
Lystra, and then later you have Lystra's cries that turned to shaking sobs. The moan rattled around Greta's head. The children lying on the floor didn't even stir. They didn't even hear the crying, or they were used to it. Greta
Hmm.
wasn't. She wasn't used to any of this. The dripping water, the crumbling bones everywhere. And the worst of all, this woman had a disgusting rash.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
those kind of observations that make me go like, oh, Greta's an asshole. Um, which is great. That's what you want.
Yeah.
You want
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now her being
Yeah.
like, oh man, this character needs to grow. Um, Lyra continued to cry. Stab, 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 and the child's wails caused Greta's headache to beat.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You'll notice
And
the pacing, the space you have between the
yeah. Yeah.
first cry and the second cry.
Yeah. It's not enough.
And so this
Yeah.
here you only have a couple sentences.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd give them a couple more exchanges before the cry
Yeah.
starts to annoy her. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I was conscious of not when I was writing this and editing it, I was conscious of not losing Lyra out of the like
Yeah,
making sure she like I was conscious of that and
yeah.
that.
You do a great job of keeping all three
But
characters
yeah,
involved.
I
Yeah.
get your point. Yeah, it does could do with an extra little segment in there of them chatting. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't need much. It just needs like
Yeah.
one, Mother Rotten, Greta, Mother Rotten,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Lyra continues to cry. That's really
Yeah.
all you need. You just need like three little lines to give us some space between the two places.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Um yeah, this is great. I would lean into Greta being horrible. So, can you
Yep.
silence her? She said, rubbing her forehead. Who? Mother Rotten said, who? You said the whining child in front of you, of course. I'd call her something besides a child. The whining
So
brat.
that's funny because I had like when I was writing this and she was being horrible, I'm like, I was like, I need to tone this down slightly because she's just being horrible all the time. And I'd used rat, like, just horrible
Yeah.
words throughout. And I'm like, okay. But so I had a word in there before. I can't remember what it was. One of the many horrible words that I seem to have at my fingertips.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll change that back happily.
It is troubling when you're writing and you get a character voice so strong, but that character voice is terrible, and you're like, wait, what is wrong with me that I can nail this voice? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I write a character in all of my books. I bring them into every book. They're
Yeah,
always a side character called Sexy Tony, and he is a
I
misogynist. Yeah.
I've heard you talk about Sexy Tony before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm always troubled. I'm like, why do I write this voice so easily? This is a terrible thing to do.
It's the easiest
Um,
scene you ever write whenever Sexy Tony's involved.
yeah, it's always like, oh, I actually bring him in when I'm stuck. When I'm like, I don't know what to do in this place anymore. I'm like, well, Sexy Tony and Popeye have to show up. Now I can fix it. Um, yeah, this is interesting. Her coming into the room.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I disagree. I think you do a great job building to her coming in.
yeah,
Um, you just have like I am coming in, Greta
yeah,
announced.
yeah,
I think that what's missing is the emotion around why she's coming in.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah. Am I making sense?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So she wants to take control of the room. To like part of her personality is control
Yeah.
and trying to take control of situations. So she wants to come in and like when she's on the edge of the room, she doesn't feel like she can control the room yet because she hasn't like scoped it out enough and got a feel for what's going on. And then she gets almost annoyed now by the like she's almost to a point where she's annoyed that she just wants to come in and like take over and control. Um so yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
I would say there needs to be a little more relenting here, a little more
yeah,
frustration in
yeah, yeah.
her.
Okay, okay, okay.
And just in this one line. Again, dude, I'm picking at you because it's so good. I didn't have anything to say. But yeah, this I would give a little more.
Yeah, yeah,
You do a great job setting up that she's torn, that she doesn't actually want to walk into the room because it's really
yeah,
gross.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Here's where we need a stronger transition in and out.
yeah,
So Lystra moaned in response and pulled another clump of hair.
yeah,
Greta strode into the room, leaving the door open. And then you have this Silas had taught
yeah.
her.
That's kind of like yeah, ties back
Yeah.
to other work that I've, yeah. So yeah, 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 that needs to be either just taken out or yeah,
I'd leave it. I
right.
would leave it. I like that the door's open, and when the door closes at the end,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
really
That's
moving.
definitely
Yeah.
yeah,
But this the transition comes between when he pushed her off the tower. Careful not to touch any Apollo rags, sleeping on the floor. She
yeah,
worked her way through
yeah,
another runs. Can you feel the emotional
yeah,
transition? Because
totally,
this is
yeah,
a painful thing, right? Like the fact
yeah,
that she's not in the tower anymore is hard.
yeah. And then she's just yeah,
Yeah, all it would need is a sentence that like transitions you back. So like Greta started leaving the door open. Silas had taught her to always think about the exits. She thought about that when he pushed her off the tower. You
mm-hmm.
know, um, of course he probably wasn't talking about this kind of room in this kind of setting,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like her
yeah,
life in the tower had been so
yeah,
um polished in comparison
yes.
to
I get
this.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I yeah, that's a good spot in terms of transition. And
Yeah,
then
and just a
yeah, yeah,
sentence or two to bring us back to the
yeah,
moment, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
actually like the retreat into her pain, but we got to come back.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Uh, so this is interesting. Here, Lyra is losing the last toe. I thought it sounded like somebody had cut the toes off. Um,
So yeah, yeah, I'm laughing just because what is going on in my head? So disgusting.
it is
Um,
really gross. Yeah,
and why is it I've like someone's chopped off four of her toes and they've left the middle one. I
they've left
don't
the
even
middle one.
know
It's
like that.
it's really darkly humorous, and Greta's observation of like, why would you leave that middle toe? Um,
It was
yeah,
me asking that to myself, basically. So yeah, she's already had them cut off, and now it's kind of what I'm trying to imply here is that everything's so dirty and infected that you know that toe's
gotcha.
coming off anyway. So
Yeah, it works fine. It's just me looking for things to say.
yeah, yeah.
I leave it exactly how it is because it's really funny. It's really like darkly funny. Like you laugh at it, you're like, I shouldn't be laughing at a child with no toes, but it's really funny.
That's my favorite kind of humor. Like,
Yeah, they're like, oh, I feel guilty about laughing about this.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah, so we move into this place where things are going to get more intimate between Greta and Mother
Yeah.
Rotten's with the weapons. Is Lyra still in Mother Rotten's lap when she pulls the knife?
So maybe that wasn't clear above that she's actually in a chair opposite with her foot in
Hmm.
Mother Rotten's lap. So it's her
Okay.
foot that's in her lap, not
And is she still in that chair?
yeah, yeah. When you come in, she stays in there. They are right up to the point where she pulls the knife into Greta's stomach, and then basically she's there right until she gets told to go and sit in front of the fire.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would add just a line in here before this, like tying the last knot, the ragged bandage now covering Lyra's foot.
Hmm.
I would just put something in here about Lyra's cry slowing because later down here she's done crying.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
So I would just I would have it. So you did a nice job building from like a slow moan to a cry to a sob.
yeah, yeah.
Start bringing it back down
Right. Okay. Okay.
instead of just like the single.
Yeah.
Now we're done. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, bring it back down. And I might mention like she moved in her chair, keeping her
Yeah. Yeah.
foot in
Yeah.
Mother
Just
Rotten's seat. Yeah.
keep sense of where everyone's positioned in the room.
Yeah. But again, this is a really small thing, man. That it's
Yeah.
not, like I said before, it's not in these transitions where the reader's going to focus. They're going to focus on this big
Yeah. Yeah.
back and forth
Yeah.
that I'm
Yeah.
actually not commenting on because it's so good.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and it is good, right? Like, and you do a great job here of just circling in on the two of them,
Yeah.
and you keep all of that really great energy in there, just using their vocalizations with no body language. It makes it incredibly intimate.
Yeah.
It's very well done. Um, yeah, you did lose me here. Of you go then
Yeah.
you left the door open after all.
So I'm trying to. So she's ranting about like, oh, I should go back up to the tower
Yeah,
and bring people down to have yous all taken away.
yeah.
And essentially, I'm trying to say, she's Mother Rotten's like is saying, off you go then. And I'll put the part about the door because I was trying to kick in that the she notices that the door's open and then
I
they
see where
slam and
you're
shut at the
going.
end.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's whether or not I just take out the bit about the door and just leave in, off you go then, as if this it's like her saying, oh, go on then, go on, bring them. But with Mother Norton's knowing that she can't leave here and get back there, back to the
I really like where you're going. I wouldn't change what you have. I'd add a sentence at the
right.
end.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
like, off you go then. You left the door after all.
yeah,
Just a quick jot to the base of the tower.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Something. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah,
I think where you lost me is you pulled back to the door, but then didn't come back to the moment.
yeah. Okay.
So we got to come back to the moment. But it's a great, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Uh, yeah, and again, man, this is all great. I have no, yeah. She goes a little Yoda here,
Yeah, I laughed.
protective in here
I
are
laughed.
my little blighters.
I laughed. I laughed when I saw that comment. I didn't. Um, I would just, yeah, I'm going to change that to my little blighters are protective. Something that's just less Yoda.
Yeah,
Just
well, her sentence structure, like if we come back up here where
yeah,
she's
yeah,
talking, her sentence structure is very like her. If I were to define her voice in a
yeah,
chart, I'd be like short sentences,
yeah,
adjacent to topic. Um,
yeah,
she reflects and reacts to what's being said. She doesn't give any new information.
yeah, yeah,
Does that
yeah,
make sense? That's a part of the voice you're creating here. And I would
yeah.
always have her doing something else.
Okay.
All conversations with Mother Rotten need to feel like a side conversation that is
Yeah.
almost bothering her.
I like
Yeah.
that's such a good idea. Yeah. That.
Because
Yeah.
when she turns her full attention
Yeah.
to you, you're almost unhappy that she has.
Which is what happens at the end of the
Which is what
scene.
happens at the end of this.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
you want to keep that like she's always kind of doing something else, and you always kind
Uh,
of want her doing something else. Like you don't
yeah.
want her
Yeah. Yeah.
focused on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
So,
is.
but
Yeah. That's good.
yeah,
That's really.
so if you'll notice what you're doing, which is great, is she's animals. These are her phrases. Animals is such a nasty word. Careful now. Everyone knows who I am. Mother Rottens. And who is that? You
Yeah,
see,
yeah,
a thief, I can barely walk, let alone steal. She's giving nothing.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
great. It's a fantastic voice, and she's always reacting to what's being said. It's one of the ways that she gives nothing is she always puts herself in a conversation in the position of responding
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
not even when she starts the conversation, her starting the conversation is an invitation to the other person
yeah,
to say, come in,
yeah,
come
yeah,
in,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
it's the invitation, like, hey, come in here and start something so that I can respond to what you're saying,
yeah, 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 yeah.
right?
And but I won't tell you anything. Yeah,
I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm not going to give you any orders. I'm not going to
yeah,
bark any commands. I'm
yeah,
just going to, and it gives her that great con man feel of like you're never fully sure where she stands because
yeah,
she's always just replying to what you say. So when you get down in here, the reason that Yoda voice stands out is because suddenly she's got a complex sentence structure.
yeah. Okay, it's not just a single like. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's not just an easy one.
yeah.
And then,
Okay,
don't like their mothers being called by nasty words. That actually works. It's just this first line that's that
yeah,
complex,
that's
you
fine.
know, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I've definitely
but
changed that. That's a good
as
point.
you write her, keep her voice in that, like, yeah.
Yeah,
Um, and here you get a little out of voice for Greta, and that Greta stutters.
yeah, yeah,
Stuttering shows insecurity
yeah. Uh,
um and hesitation. She doesn't seem like an insecure.
no, 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 not not when she's in front of people that she thinks she's above.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
could see her stuttering the first time she meets Silas
yeah, yeah, yeah,
in the book. That's when she's going to stutter.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And especially when she's in like this battle situation,
yeah,
no stutter. If
yeah,
anything, you want her to be almost too aggressive.
yeah, 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 yeah. Okay.
You want your other character having to pull her back.
Yeah.
Like, hey, 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 let's not, we don't have to punch anybody. You can keep it like just
Yes.
relax.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And you
And
want that
that's
character apologizing for her all the time. I'm so sorry for my friend. She has
that's
no manners. She's not from
and
here. She doesn't know what's going on.
and that's definitely some of the other stuff that I've written. And this is her, the troubles caused by her steamrolling in, and yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And he always wants to be, oh,
yeah,
hey, no, yeah. That kind of
yeah,
um the line's great though. I just pulled the stutter out.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's really good. Again, I'd give her a nonverbal here, more guarded. So you have this like, um, oh, a coin in the swear jar is hysterical. Oh, a coin in the swear jar should sort it out, my child. And where do you keep this swear jar in this cesspit? Well, I probably wouldn't have her say, well, I would have her just like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
stare blankly.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Because the well almost feels like an apology, and you
yeah,
never
yeah,
want this
yeah,
character to
yeah,
apologize.
yeah, yeah,
She's not sorry that she
yeah,
thinks this is gross.
yeah, yeah.
Not yet, right? Like,
Yes, they'll change, but yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Toward the end of the book, this is a great repeated scene where she comes back in here and sees all of these children with empathy.
Well, maybe she's bandaging a child or something towards it, or like yeah,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But you want to pull back in. Maybe Lyra finally loses her final toe.
yeah.
But you want to pull back into this moment later and have her have a completely different perspective of it.
Okay,
Um,
I'm looking forward to us getting to my favorite comment on your whole
what
thing,
was your favorite comment on the whole thing?
which is uh this not the next one.
The
You're really
next one?
pitching as she's now threatening poor and wounded kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just like, yeah, yeah, she is. Yeah,
Yeah, which is, by the way, is great. I just wanted to make sure it's what you
yeah,
wanted because she's like, Greta ground her teeth as she watched the girl hobble over to the fire, squeezing herself amongst a group of sleeping children. Oh, don't thank me. I will pay you back. Like,
I think,
seriously? You're gonna kill a kid now?
I think,
So yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah, I
great.
think the yeah, I just pictured you reading that and being like, oh my word, like,
Yeah, this character is tough. This is a tough
yeah,
character. Yeah.
um,
It
Okay.
does remind me of the Game of Thrones, like talking about epic fantasy.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, not in the same way, but there is
Yeah.
like
It's
multiple like horrible, unlikable characters in there
yeah.
that you have to learn to like Tyrion Lannister is a
Yeah.
terrible he's a terrible human.
Yeah. 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 And that is the genre that I'm right, like that kind of grim, dark, epic fantasy. So there's
Okay,
that, and then my favorite author, Joe Abercrombie, also writes in this, and it's the same kind of stuff. It's his stuff has got much more of the line of humor through it, which is what
okay,
I like. So I try and sprinkle that in as well. But yeah, they're just not likable characters, and they tend to get humbled or killed.
gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, okay. So I want to hold that thought for the end because I have a question about
yeah, yeah, yeah,
your other characters.
yeah,
So here's the only place in the story, man, where I was like, okay, your emotional tone is off.
yeah, yeah,
So we have the child threaten her. We have the child move back to,
yeah,
she pays the swear jar toll, and the child moves back to the fire.
yeah,
And then Mother Rotten's lifted her bare feet to the chair, and Lyra limped away. The black smock rode up her legs, revealing white bulbous smear, the same rash on her arms and necks. Her toenails were brown with her teeth. Greta could have preferred Lyra's one missing foot than these.
That sorry, Jeff, that's made my day that you had to read that out.
Then I had to read that out loud.
Because it's so disgusting.
Yeah, you've already grossed me out.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
This isn't doing anything for you.
Yeah, this is yeah, this stuff just find easy, really easy to write for some reason. Like that is my problem. That is just like out of everything I wrote in the scene, that took about 2 seconds.
That's really funny.
But yeah, I get your point. It's like, yeah, it needs to go, well, it needs to go, or it needs to go, part of it needs to go higher up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or it needs
Yeah,
to go at the start or something. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it's one of those things of like, I was talking about as you go through the segments, deciding how each segment's supposed to feel.
Yeah, yeah,
We're at a point of connection now
yeah, yeah,
where
yeah,
they're actually going to connect with each other, right? Like the scene moves from extremely guarded to hostile
yeah,
to Greta relenting and having this point of um you know I'm looking for the word relenting connection
yeah, 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 yeah,
where Greta's finally like, fine, I do need you. I'm not going to murder all of these children.
yeah,
I'm going to restrain myself to talk to you. This paragraph pushes separation between her
yeah,
and
yeah,
Mother
yeah,
Rotten
yeah,
as you're
yeah,
pulling them into each other.
yeah, yeah. That makes
So
sense.
I wouldn't have it here, and it pulls back to that emotion of
Disgust and yeah,
yeah, disgust, and you want her at this point pulling in and not pushing away.
yeah,
Um
yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So let me ask you, do you have more than one POV?
Um, this is where you find out how little plotting I actually have. No, I have. I'm torn on that, to be honest. Like
Okay.
because it is very like as a genre, like, well, you've got two versions you can, but most of the time you see multi POV, and
Yeah.
the temptation is to put a POV in the tower, back in the tower,
Hmm.
like where she's come from, and then use that as like an insight into what the villain's doing in the tower, and so I
Yeah.
might do that. Um, and another temptation is to do another a POV from in the Rottens, like maybe the kind of Artful Dodger character could be POV.
Gotcha.
I don't know. But yeah, I'm struggling a wee bit with a decision around that.
Okay. I have a feeling that might be one of the reasons you're stalling out at like 20 to 30%.
Yeah, yeah,
So often epic fantasies are written as braided narratives, which
yeah,
means there's a through line of major events.
yeah,
These events are going to happen,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? And all of the characters come together at
yeah.
these major events.
Which is my favorite part of the stories as well. Like that
Yeah.
point where they all come back is like satisfying.
Yeah, so I would so you need you the mistake people make writers make when they're trying to write these braided narratives is they write POVs that are too close to each other.
Okay.
So you don't want Mother Rotten to have a POV.
No, no, no. Yeah,
You
yeah,
do not want this third character who's outside, who's kind of her guide, who's Greta's guide, to have a
yeah,
POV. He does not get one
yeah, yeah, yeah,
because that's all too intertwined with Greta's narrative.
yeah,
You need 2 to 3 other narratives
yeah,
that are totally different stories
yeah,
of characters doing their own things. And then you need like major world events
yeah,
that they all have to respond to. So if you think of like Game of Thrones, the king Robert Baratheon dies,
yeah, 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 and that
right?
impacts everyone.
That's a major world event.
Yeah, yeah,
The Red Wedding,
yeah,
major world event.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was gonna happen, right? Like things were set in motion. That moment was going to happen.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
the discovery of dragons, right?
yeah,
Like these are these huge events that then everyone has to respond to. So, and a lot of times these events don't have anything to do with the
with the others.
ongoing narratives. They're like earthquakes that shake the world.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
That then everybody has to be like, oh crap, okay, now this
yeah,
is where we are. I would try to get in your head at least 1 or 2 major events,
yeah, yeah,
and then you write up to those events. Does that make sense?
yeah, totally. Yeah, that's super useful. And yeah, as someone who doesn't think and plot, like that's the kind of thing that just you stepping back and pointing that is really
Yeah, and you
cool.
don't need to plot out. Like you can keep your strong. I'm discovery writing Greta.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
don't need to plot anything,
yeah,
but it'll give you a way to weave these narratives together and that like, okay, at this point in the narrative, X thing is going to happen.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And they're all going to have to respond to that. Like they're
yeah,
all living their lives. They're having Greta is trying to figure out life in the Rotten. She's trying to figure out who she is. She's
yeah,
trying to figure out what's going on. And then X thing happens, and now she
yeah,
has to respond.
yeah, yeah,
Girl in tower is living her life in the tower. She's trying to figure out what's going on. She's trying to understand the world of the tower, and then X thing happens, and now she has to reorient herself,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, you
yeah,
know, other kid in the Rottens is trying to figure out like how to survive, how to live in the
yeah,
Rottens, how to maybe improve their station,
yeah,
right? Like, you know, this is where the idea of theme comes in. I don't think you should try to plan your theme ahead of time, but just know that the
yeah, yeah,
theme of your book is going to be what all of these characters are struggling with.
yeah. I think I do have a feeling around theme in terms of just that idea of control and how
Okay.
much control like you have over things and how much control can hurt people. And yeah, so it's kind of
Mm,
like if I'm going to think of one word that describes what I'm thinking about is control. That
okay.
like
Is
yeah,
there like a societal element to that, like
yeah,
classist type
yeah, yeah, yeah.
control as
So
well?
like the Rottens is kind of like on the edge of the city and kind of like yeah, take it like
Yeah.
they're not allowed to get into the city essentially. So yeah, yeah. So there's definitely like a class side of things.
Yeah, a lot of times that theme is taken up by sci-fi,
Yeah,
is where it's really common and where you're gonna
yeah,
get a different character from each class.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And that's kind of what you need. You're like your instinct to be like, okay, I need somebody in the tower is spot on. I don't
Yes.
know that I'd put another character in the Rottens
Yeah,
because you have Greta. You need a blue collar character.
yeah. So someone kind of like almost like the guard that stands on like as the
Yeah.
wall between the two. Like that, that kind of person or like yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Typically that character works really well when they're like, I'm a guard that stands between the two, but someday I'm gonna be, the Jedi in the tower. And
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of their friends are like, that's not how this works.
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then he'd be like, no, 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 you don't understand.
Yeah.
Someday I'm gonna make it.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
that's you weren't born into that class. That's not
yeah.
how that works. And
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it is the Luke Skywalker as the dirt water farmer.
Yeah.
He's like, someday I'm going to be a pilot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And his
yeah,
uncle's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Go out and look at the moisture
yeah.
rig.
But you don't, yeah, but I don't want
Yeah.
them to be like the rock bottom poverty of the kid. Like you need to be
No,
like
yeah.
different parts of the scale
Yeah.
of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then, these epic fantasies either bring all of those characters together in the end as a team,
Yeah,
or they bring them in as rivals. Right.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
but in the end, they're all going to have to pick sides around this global world thing that's
yeah,
happening.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But if you can get the like 2 to 3 major world events, it'll give you something to write each narrative to.
yeah,
And you can discovery right as you go. I might actually just, I don't know. It depends where your inspiration comes from. You might write Greta's whole story up to that one piece and then go write another character's whole story up to that one moment.
yeah,
And then you can braid them together as you
yeah,
as
yeah,
you
yeah,
want.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Whatever gets me to the revision process quicker would be good. That's easily my favorite part. So like,
Yeah. That's
um,
fun.
but yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
That's
would
super, super helpful.
when I write braided narratives, my problem is losing voices.
Okay.
So like right now, JP and I for Nerds
Yeah,
season 2 is a braided narrative. We have one crew in DC and one crew in this
yeah,
small town called New Richmond. And I write like 4 chapters in DC and then like 4 chapters in New Richmond.
yeah,
And I always lose a couple days in
yeah,
between as I try to recapture the voices of the
yeah, yeah,
last.
yeah, yeah.
So, it might be for me,
Easier to
if I
write
was
one. Yeah,
smarter, I would have written all of the DC
yeah,
and then written all of the New Richmond. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah. But I'm not
definitely.
smart. Be smart. Be smarter. Okay.
Well, your mistake will be my advantage then, or
Yeah,
my
that's right.
right, yeah.
Learn from the stupid things that I did. Anything else with the piece you want to talk about? Anything we didn't cover?
No, I think that was really useful, and
Okay.
then a couple of points at the end of my plot are super super helpful. So I
Great.
appreciate that.
All right. Well, Scott, thanks so much, man. This was fun.
It was great.
I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
hit stop on the recording. We can talk for another couple minutes.
Yeah, no worries.